Donald Trump, of course, is the president. He wants a new toy for his Air Force. A shiny, costly, stealthy, brand new fighter jet. We are going to ensure America has generations of air dominance. Because of this 6th-generation fighter, I can be pretty certain in telling you that the F-47 is the winner over what the Chinese have now. The problem is that once they go to China, China can apply any sort of export restrictions to them. The US military was once considered to have the most powerful and innovative weapons inventory in the world. Many military experts even claim that there was no rival to the US technological superiority. However, in recent years, things have started to change. China and Russia's development of hypersonic missiles, advanced air defense systems, and especially 6th-generation fighter jets are shaking America's long-held image of being ahead of the curve. What is even more striking is that China has almost sole control over some of the raw materials vital for critical defense technologies. Now, China, the dominant global supplier of rare earth elements, has escalated its economic influence on critical materials that play a crucial role in modern technology, including military applications. This poses a serious threat to the F-47 NGA, touted by Donald Trump as his final project, and why the United States is signing increasingly comprehensive military cooperation agreements with its allies in the Pacific. High-precision missiles, advanced air defense networks, and projects that have been described as the Air Force of the future are on the agenda one after the other. Although Washington seems to want to tip the balance in the Asia-Pacific skies in its favor with these moves, there is also a too little, too late dimension, because while China is rapidly advancing in hypersonic missile technologies, massive naval projects, and 6th-generation fighter jets, the US strategic move is not fully on track. Nevertheless, the White House has recently begun to boast about an aircraft it calls the F-47. Some in defense circles say this jet is a game changer until China hit Trump in the most vulnerable place. Indeed, Donald Trump sees this 6th-generation jet as his final project. At my direction, the United States Air Force is moving forward with the world's first 6th-generation fighter jet, he declared. Beyond the many defense moves of his first presidential term, he claimed that the F-47 NGA program would extend America's global air superiority for decades to come. But China has made a move that puts the future of this project in question. Beijing has imposed restrictions on the export of minerals used in aviation electronics and radar technologies, including critical rare earth elements. These restrictions make it difficult to produce some of the components at the heart of the F-47 project, Trump's big dream. The 6th-generation fighter jet now seems to have been hit by a solid Chinese hook. But could this blow shut down the F-47 for good? How will Trump and his team respond? And how will this affect the balance of power and economic competition in the Pacific? Before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and hit the like button. Let's dive deeper into China's insidious moves against Trump's pet NGA program. We are no strangers to the United States' innovative defense projects, especially since the 1990s. So-called 5th-generation aircraft, such as the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning, have taken center stage in the Pentagon's air superiority doctrine. But Donald Trump wanted to take this accumulation to a new level. The NGA, Next Generation Air Dominance Project, which was launched during his term, brought the F-47 to the forefront. Trump described this aircraft as America's future security insurance. According to some social media sources, this model, which Boeing is working on, will have all the sixth-generation features, such as artificial intelligence-enabled sensor systems, hypersonic weapons integration, swarm drone command, and low radar visibility. On paper, this is indeed a game-changing aircraft concept. However, Washington's ability to realize this ambitious project depends heavily on the global supply chain. Without rare earth elements, it is almost impossible to produce advanced radars, infrared sensors, high-temperature alloys, superconducting components, and materials that absorb electromagnetic waves. This is where China comes in. It has long been known that Beijing holds the majority of the global rare earths market. Some reports even suggest that this ratio exceeds 80%, even according to the US Department of Defense's own data. China has no alternative in the supply of critical materials. Now that position seems to have turned into a weapon targeting Trump's NGA project. A few months ago, the White House press secretary responded to questions on this issue are addressed by saying, "We are evaluating different options to ensure the security of the defense supply chain." However, some American media and social media analysts paint a much more alarming picture. Allegedly, Boeing is already facing stock shortages of some critical parts needed for the F-47, and even prototype testing could be disrupted if Beijing fully enforces export restrictions. This is Trump's main concern about the situation. While China and Russia are making significant progress on their own sixth-generation projects, the US's major F-47 NGA project could be sabotaged. But is sabotage too strong a word? It doesn't seem to be, as sixth-generation air power involves much more than a conventional aircraft design. Think about a cockpit equipped with artificial intelligence algorithms, a computer network that relieves the pilot of some of their workload and can instantly perform threat analysis, the ability to patrol at high altitudes and even near space, and the capacity to launch coordinated attacks using drone swarms. The production of the electronic and software infrastructure required for all of this largely depends on high-performance chips made from rare minerals. To produce these chips, there is a reliance on raw materials from China. It's also claimed that the special alloys used in the aircraft's body coating require certain elements that are known to be monopolized by Beijing. Therefore, this airplane, which Trump referred to as his final project, may have become America's most vulnerable project. So, what is Trump's reaction to this situation? According to information leaked on social media, the former president is said to have told his closest advisors, "This is a national security threat. We should have taken action sooner." However, there is a different administration in the White House now, and their approach can be summarized as, "We must do everything we can to save this critical project." In the end, the United States doesn't want to lose the sixth generation race at a time when Russia and China are quickly gaining strength. But the real challenge is the enormous cost of replacing such an extensive supply chain in a short period. Some experts point out that the unit cost of the F-47 has already skyrocketed. If the process of sourcing raw materials from outside China is added, this cost is expected to increase exponentially. The question is, how willing Congress will be in this regard. The Russian factor should not be forgotten either. Moscow is known to be working on projects such as the Su-57 and Su-75, although it is claimed that the Su-57 is experiencing setbacks in mass production and logistics. The fact that Russia is moving beyond the fifth generation is a development that makes the US uneasy. If Washington continues its geopolitical tensions with Russia on the one hand and faces China's raw material restrictions on the other, it is likely to be squeezed on both fronts. This could turn Trump's F-47 dream into a nightmare. Seeing this, China made its move at perhaps the best timing. If Beijing wants to break American influence in the Asia-Pacific, undermining a sixth-generation aircraft project could be one of the most effective ways to do so. Of course, this also depends on whether China is willing to maintain export restrictions for an extended period. But are there no alternatives? Of course, some US industrialists are discussing developing new mineral resources in Africa or South America, but this could take years to materialize. Moreover, political and economic instability in these regions increases the risks of investment. Beijing has already made extensive trade deals in these regions, so if Washington starts prospecting in Africa or South America, China could be one step ahead. On the other hand, turning to friendly countries like Australia and Canada is also an option. However, it is unclear whether these countries' existing reserves are large enough to fully supply the US's sixth-generation projects. Let's say there are reserves. Then there's the issue of extraction and processing facilities. In short, it's easy to say, let's solve it in a short period of time. But the implementation is a different story. Meanwhile, China is also developing its own sixth-generation fighter jet project. While more advanced versions of the J-20 are being discussed, leaked images of a new prototype, the J-36, have caused a stir in international military analysis circles. Beijing is also conducting groundbreaking experiments with autonomous drone, swarms and hypersonic missiles. If successful, it could quickly close the gap with the United States, not only in the fifth-generation aircraft race, but also in the sixth-generation race. This would mean a major rival to Trump's F-47 before it even gets off the ground. As the saying goes, the best defense is a good offense. Beijing probably wants to weaken Washington by not only playing defense, but also by using technology and raw materials strategically. At the same time, China is facing the economic sanctions spiral, as the US has recently imposed sanctions against Beijing in various sectors, including restrictions on semiconductor technology. In response, Beijing can send a clear message: we will reduce shipments of critical elements that you use in your airplanes. Some American media outlets claim that this message is intentionally meant to undermine Trump's large-scale airplane promotions. Although the White House seems to be attempting to solve the problem through diplomatic channels, no one has a clear answer as to whether a permanent compromise will be reached diplomatically. For those curious about the technical details of the F-47, we can explain a bit more. One of the most distinctive features of a sixth-generation jet is the technology known as sensor fusion. In other words, the aircraft collects large amounts of data from both the ground and the air, simultaneously and instantly, provides the pilot with an integrated situational report. This data processing capacity requires chips that can operate at high speeds, and most of the special rare minerals used to make those chips are sourced from China. Certain elements also play a critical role in the coatings used for stealth technology. There's also the artificial intelligence dimension. According to some reports, the F-47 will be able to predict many of the pilot's maneuvers in flight, make suggestions, and even perform automatic rescue procedures in critical situations. To realize such an advanced system, both software and hardware are necessary, and at the heart of the hardware lies the need for those critical metals. Defense projects have always played a significant role in Trump's political career. One of the most tangible outputs of the America First slogan was the defense budget, which grew to enormous proportions. The F-47 was presented as the centerpiece of this budget. "We are entering a new era," the former president stated, arguing that the sixth-generation aircraft would provide absolute superiority on the battlefield of the future. However, China, which is making its presence felt in the Asia-Pacific, is trying to temper Washington's enthusiasm with the message, "You can't build that plane without me." Some experts believe that this move is just the beginning and that Beijing could impose tougher restrictions if necessary. For example, there's talk of halting the export of certain special metal alloys entirely, or raising their prices to astronomical levels. Of course, the US may not be so helpless. According to some sources, Washington is seriously considering reopening domestic rare earth mines to break China's monopoly. Potential reserves are known to exist in parts of the US, such as Nevada or California. However, it would take years to get these mines operational due to environmental regulations and economic costs. Local communities, environmental organizations, and opposition politicians could also oppose the move. Ending dependence on China could spark a major domestic political struggle. In conclusion, the fate of the F-47 project depends on a complex equation of not only defense technology, but also domestic and foreign politics. In this equation, the attitude of other actors in the Asia-Pacific is also crucial. Countries like Japan, South Korea, and Australia want defense cooperation with the US because they are concerned about China's growing influence in the region. However, the concept of the sixth generation is a bit distant for them at the moment. They are more interested in modernizing aircraft like the F-16 or F-35, as well as air defense systems. Nevertheless, if the F-47 becomes a reality and enters mass production, it could also interest these countries. On the other hand, China may have brought its raw material trump card to the table precisely to prevent this. The strategy of if you try to shape the region with your technological superiority, I will create an environment where you cannot build your weapons, seems to make sense. But is the F-47 project really at risk of being shut down altogether? Sources close to the Pentagon say there is no cancellation of the project, only delays. However, some independent analysts suggest that a prolonged delay could ultimately end the project, as military air technology is advancing rapidly. 5 years from now, today's design might be considered obsolete, especially if competitors are able to develop new concepts during that time. The US might then consider starting a new project from scratch. Such a situation could lead to trillion-dollar burdens on the defense budget. How will American taxpayers react to this? Would Congress approve such a bill? This is not just an American domestic issue. Globally, the race for control over technology and raw materials is intensifying. At the heart of this race is the Asia-Pacific region. As China grows its economic and military power, the US is trying to maintain its long-held global leadership role. Projects like the F-47 are therefore of symbolic importance.